My Video Book Review by Campbell. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Some similar books would be Sense and Sensibility, Emma, and Persuasion. They're all written by Jane Austen, so I think they would be somewhat similar. Genre. Pride and Prejudice is a fiction book. I can tell this because it does not contain facts, and it does not really teach me about a certain topic. Setting. This book mainly takes place at their home Logbourne in the Georgian era. They do go other places, like London and Pemberley, but they always return to Logbourne. Characters. Protagonists. Elizabeth Bennet is the main character. I know this because the story mainly follows her point of view. Other important characters are Mr. Darcy, a friend of Mr. Bingley's, Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet, Elizabeth's parents, and Jane Bennet, her sister and close friend, and Mr. Bingley, Mr. Darcy's friend and a sweetheart of Jane's. Some antagonists are Lady Catherine, who lies about Mr. Darcy being engaged to her daughter, and Mr. Wickham, who lies about Mr. Darcy. I think he did it more to impress Elizabeth, but it kept Elizabeth from seeing Mr. Darcy's character. Mr. Darcy is in Elizabeth's head kind of the bad guy for part of the book. Everything he does is frowned upon. Elizabeth Bennet lives with her family at their home Logbourne. With the arrival of Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy, the family's lives are thrown into tragedy, love, marriage, and it ultimately comes down to someone of pride and someone who is very prejudiced. Plot. Exposition. Mr. Bingley comes with his friend Mr. Darcy, who is rude to Elizabeth at a ball. When Jane falls ill and has to stay with the Bingleys, Mr. Darcy discovers his love towards Elizabeth. Rising action. Mr. Bingley leaves for London, and Jane, who is in love with him, is upset. Lydia, a foolish sister of Elizabeth's, leaves for Brighton to chase after a militia camp. Climax. Elizabeth goes on a trip with her aunt and uncle and meet Mr. Darcy, at first who she hated, but now she finds she rather loves him. All of a sudden, she is called away from her trip by a letter stating that Lydia has eloped with Mr. Wickham. Author's purpose. I think that the author's purpose was to entertain. She did not really teach me about something or try to make me think a certain way. From what I have gathered, the lesson of her story was not to be vain or hold grudges. Because Mr. Darcy was vain and Elizabeth held a grudge, it prevented Elizabeth from seeing Mr. Darcy's true character. I really enjoyed Pride and Prejudice for its cleverness. Before I started, my mom told me that the book started slow, but I did not really think so. Sometimes I could not put the book down, but other times it went very slow. The climax was very slow as well. Recommendation. I would recommend this book to anybody, but a warning, this book is not an action or adventure book, and I know that some people would not like it. It does have some romance, but it is so natural that it's not a big deal. There is absolutely nothing bad in it, and is probably my new favorite book.